In the long and sordid history of male inadequacy masquerading as superiority, it would be difficult to find a more perfect specimen than Andrew Tate, a man who has monetized masculine insecurity with the efficiency of a Victorian snake oil salesman and the moral sensibility of a syphilitic pimp. Here is someone who has taken the ancient anxieties of sexually frustrated young men and packaged them into a business model, selling misogyny as self-improvement and abuse as empowerment, all while driving rented Bugattis and pretending that having money makes him something other than what he transparently is, a confidence man whose confidence extends only to his ability to separate fools from their money. The manosphere, as this digital sewer styles itself, represents something genuinely new in the taxonomy of male pathology. Previous generations of misogynists at least had the decency to be ashamed of their hatred of women, to dress it up in religious dogma or pseudoscientific theories about skull shapes and wandering wombs. The modern variant, exemplified by Tate and his imitators, celebrates its own toxicity as a virtue, markets its dysfunction as success, and recruits damaged boys into a cult of performative sociopathy that would have appalled even the most dedicated woman-hater of previous eras. Tate himself is almost too perfect a symbol of this movement to be real. A failed kickboxer who turned to pimping, he discovered that exploiting women directly through webcam services was less profitable than exploiting men's fears about women through online courses. His Hustlers University, surely the most grotesque abuse of the word university since Trump University, charged desperate young men $50 a month to learn the secrets of success from a man whose main achievement was convincing people he had achievements. It's a pyramid scheme where the pyramid is built from the crushed self-esteem of adolescents who think that treating women like objects will somehow make them feel like subjects. The philosophy, if one can dignify it with that term, is a kindergarten version of Nietzsche, as interpreted by someone who's never read Nietzsche. They speak of alpha males and beta males as if human society were a wolf pack, apparently unaware that even the wolf pack theory has been debunked by the very scientist who proposed it. They divide all human interaction into dominance and submission, all relationships into conquest and surrender, all of life into a zero-sum game where someone must lose for them to win. It's the worldview of a perpetual adolescent who never evolved beyond the playground understanding that might makes right. What's particularly revealing is their obsession with evolutionary psychology, or rather their cartoon version of it. They've taken Darwin and turned him into a dating coach, reduced millions of years of human evolution to a series of pickup lines and gym routines. Women, in their schema, are simultaneously simple creatures driven by primitive desires for providers and Machiavellian manipulators whose shit tests and hypergamy must be constantly countered. The contradiction never occurs to them. If women are so inferior, why do they require such elaborate strategies to manage? The truth that Tate and his followers cannot face is that their entire worldview is founded on fear. Fear of women, fear of rejection, fear of their own inadequacy. Rather than deal with these fears honestly, they've constructed an elaborate mythology where their failures with women aren't their fault, but the result of feminism, social media, modern society, anything but their own repulsive personalities and prehistoric attitudes. They're not unsuccessful because they're unpleasant, they're unsuccessful because society has been corrupted by giving women choices. The recruitment strategy is as transparent as it is predatory. Find young men who are struggling with loneliness, with rejection, with the normal difficulties of growing up in a complex world, and tell them it's not their fault. Tell them they're victims of a feminist conspiracy. Tell them that women are the enemy, that relationships are warfare, that the only way to win is to become as callous and manipulative as they imagine women to be. Then sell them the solution. Courses, supplements, cryptocurrency schemes, whatever snake oil is trending this week. And it works, at least financially, because there's an endless supply of lost boys looking for father figures, and the internet has made it possible to reach them all simultaneously. Tate's genius, if it can be called that, was recognizing that you don't need to actually help these young men to profit from them. You just need to make them feel like they're part of something, like they're warriors in a great struggle, rather than customers in a scam. The War Room, his inner circle that costs thousands to join, is just a chat room for the expensively deluded, a digital VIP section, where the marks pay for the privilege of being closer to the con. The arrest in Romania on human trafficking charges was almost too poetic. The self-proclaimed alpha male caught in the act of doing what he'd essentially been teaching all along, treating women as commodities to be exploited for profit. His defense that it was all consensual, that the women chose to work for him, is exactly what every pimp in history has said. The only difference is that Tate broadcast his pimping philosophy to millions, turned it into a brand, made exploitation aspirational for a generation of young men who now think that degrading women is the path to success. But Tate is merely the most visible pustule on a much larger infection. The manosphere includes pickup artists who treat human intimacy like a video game, men's rights activists who think the real problem with patriarchy is that it's not patriarchal enough, incels who've turned their sexual frustration into a political identity, and various other subspecies of male grievance, each with their own vocabulary of victimhood and their own strategies for monetizing misery. They all share the same fundamental delusion, that there was some golden age when men were men and women knew their place, when relationships were simple and masculinity was unquestioned. This paradise never existed, of course. The past was full of miserable marriages, sexual frustration, and male anxiety about inadequacy. Read any literature from any era if you doubt it. The only difference is that now the anxiety has been weaponized, turned into a movement, given hashtags and crypto wallets. The damage they're doing is incalculable. Young men who might have grown out of their awkward phase, who might have learned to see women as human beings, who might have developed genuine confidence rather than perform dominance, are instead being radicalized into a worldview that makes healthy relationships impossible. They're being taught that vulnerability is weakness, that emotion is manipulation, that love is a lie told by betas who haven't taken the red pill. They're being systematically prepared for a lifetime of loneliness and rage, all while being told they're being prepared for success. And the women who encounter these men, these graduates of Hustlers University and consumers of game content, face the consequences. Every woman who's been negged, who's been treated as a conquest rather than a person, who's been subjected to the techniques these men learn from their YouTube prophets, is a casualty of this war on basic human decency. The manosphere hasn't solved male loneliness. It's weaponized it, turned it into a battering ram against women's autonomy and dignity. The saddest part is that these young men do have legitimate grievances, legitimate pain, legitimate struggles with identity and purpose in a rapidly changing world. But instead of addressing these issues constructively, the manosphere offers them a toxic simulacrum of meaning. You're a warrior in the gender wars, a soldier in the army of masculinity, a wolf among sheep. It's a participation trophy for patriarchy, a consolation prize for those who feel history has passed them by. What they need isn't Andrew Tate teaching them to view women as enemies to be conquered. They need genuine role models who can show them that strength doesn't require domination, that confidence doesn't require cruelty, that being a man doesn't mean being a predator. They need to learn that the opposite sex is not opposite at all, but fellow human beings navigating the same confusing world with the same fears and hopes and desires. But there's no money in telling young men to be decent human beings, no profit in promoting genuine equality and mutual respect. You can't sell a course on basic human empathy, can't monetize the message that women are people too, so instead we get the Andrew Tates of the world, the pimps turned prophets, the abusers turned advisors, selling their poison to a generation of young men who mistake venom for medicine. The emergence of the manosphere represents a kind of last stand of patriarchal thinking, a desperate rearguard action by those who can't accept that the world has changed and won't change back. Women have economic independence, reproductive autonomy, the ability to choose their partners or choose no partner at all. The response from the manosphere isn't to adapt to this new reality, but to rage against it, to declare war on it, to recruit an army of angry young men, to fight a battle that's already been lost. And like all last stands, it will fail. Not because of feminist opposition or social justice warriors or any of the bogeymen the manosphere invokes, but because its fundamental premise, that you can build a satisfying life on a foundation of hatred and fear, is false. The young men recruited into this movement will eventually realize that no amount of game can substitute for genuine connection, that no amount of performed dominance can fill the void left by authentic intimacy. that the prophets they followed were just pimps all along, selling them a product that doesn't work because it can't work. Andrew Tate will end up where all con men end up, either in prison or in obscurity. His Bugattis repossessed, his followers moved on to the next grifter. His legacy nothing more than a cautionary tale about what happens when masculine insecurity meets social media capitalism. But the damage he and his ilk have done will take years to undo. There's a generation of young men who've been taught to see women as enemies rather than equals, who've been sold a vision of masculinity so toxic that it poisons every relationship it touches. The antidote isn't complicated, but it's not profitable either. Teach young men that women are human beings, that relationships are partnerships, that strength comes from vulnerability, that real confidence doesn't require constant performance. Teach them that the matrix they need to escape isn't feminism, but the very ideology that tells them they're at war with half of humanity. But until someone figures out how to monetize decency, the Andrew Tates of the world will continue to thrive, feeding off the loneliness and confusion of young men who deserve better than the poison they're being sold.